folks, we got ourselves a successor showdown. Hope you're ready because we got a good one here today. This one's going to be Macedon facing off against Egypt. And let's take a look at the Egyptian army first. We got 3 Tarentine cavalry out front, or as I've renamed them accidentally in the past, mercenary cavalry or something like that. I don't remember what I came up with. There's a front line of Levi Thurio spears behind that. Looks like about 5 of them. Let's take a look at the infantry. So I see thorax swords. They can kind of be hidden in. Yep, right here is a Galatian Royal Guard. So it looks like we have a single Galatian Royal Guard, with the remainder being thorax swords, and we have some Galatian swords far flung to the flanks. There are some Egyptian slingers and Ptolemaic cavalry. These Egyptian slingers are the cotton armor wearing, I guess, version of Egyptians that come up in our minds whenever we think about the Egyptian army. All we now need is some of Pharaoh's chariots. On the Macedonian side, we're going to have some Tarentine cavalry as well. I just about said mercenary Thracian cavalry because they are a pretty common pick, but it is Tarentines. So we're going to have a line of, let's see, slingers, all slingers. So 4 slingers. Looks like thorax swords behind those. And then behind that, there are some mercenary Thracian warriors, supported by Thessalian cavalry. Thessalian cavalry are probably one of the nice saving graces of Macedon. We continually point out the fact that Macedon is probably one of, not the, but one of the worst factions. And a lot of people just really struggle to believe that. And they are, though. they're pretty bad. And I think it's just because a lot of Greek factions are bad. Now, they do have the Thracians, which can be a nice support unit. And I think that's a saving grace for them. Another of their saving graces, I would say, is the Thessalian cavalry for the price. This is really quite a good shot cavalry. And it's pretty useful. But outside of that, I mean, Macedon really doesn't possess a whole lot that's outstanding. If you're playing campaign, it's a different story, because pikes are a lot easier to make viable in a campaign. And so then it's a different story playing as successor kingdoms, because a lot of you probably think about the pikes and playing campaign, and that's probably, I imagine, what's a struggle for many of you whenever we say that they're some of the worst factions. In any case, here we go. The Egyptians are approaching. They are at a pretty big skirmish disadvantage, outnumbered 2-1. They do have the Levi Thurio spears, though, and that is a lot of javelins that could be headed the way of the Macedonians. And they are very nice screening units against the cavalry because of those javelins. Let's take a look at the rest of the Egyptian cavalry. We had the camel spears. They are not going to be good on the charge against the Ptolemaic or the Thessalian cavalry, but they will be, good afterwards, and they have the scare. But then the Hellenic Royal Cavalry is going to be, I'm confused with another faction. The Ptolemaic Cavalry is going to be very brutal on the charge. It's going to be similar to like a companion cavalry. Speaking of, let's see how they stack up. Ptolemaics hit harder in terms of melee attack. Let's see, what's the charge bonus over here? 76 versus 63. And then armor at 60 versus 70 here. Defense at 21 and then 22. So similar defense, more attack, but less charge for the Ptolemaic. More charge, less attack for the companions. So the thorax swords took a charge from the camel spears here, and then they're going to become the object of affection for a lot of javelins from the Thurio spears. Nothing like being spat on by a camel and pushed back. That would be awesome if the camels had a ranged spit attack prior to entering combat. That would be awesome, seeing like 60 camels spitting all at the same time. CA, make this happen, please. Okay? Thank you. Let's see what the Tarentines are up to over here. Looks like they're just kind of hanging out, waiting for a good time. Ooh, the Thracian warriors getting a brutal charge here. They did not take too many javelins ahead of time. They are going to thrash that Levi Thurio spear. Nice job, though, pulling in the thorax swords, and good job pulling the mercenary Thracians away from that, hopefully, trying to get a charge. And it looks like initially the Thessalian cavalry charges and then swaps out for the thorax swords, so that's a nice way to get them engaged properly. And then those same Thessalians are going to pin that thorax sword and allow the Thracians to come back around with a cycle charge. Now, the cavalry will pay a dear price for this. However, it might be worth it if both of these infantry fights start to turn out in Macedon's favor. We'll see. That thorax sword is getting chopped up. Bad. But so are the Thracian warriors because of all the missiles flying in here. There's another Thessalian cavalry that's under a tremendous amount of javelin fire. I'm pretty sure it could get melted here. It's going to come in for another disruption run, and it's being followed up by a thorax sword. So nice follow-up so far for Macedon, but Egypt's okay over here. Those fights initially didn't start out great, but they turned around. So Egypt's holding its own on those positions. Let's go look at the rest of this. Nice engagement here. The thorax swords coming in. Tarentine cavalry in a fratricide operation over here. They're on opposite sides of this. It's like the Tarentine Civil War. Yep, so there we go. They are beating each other down. There's more Macedonian Tarentines here, so I would imagine that they would win that ultimately. Thessalian cavalry looks like it went in for a charge here, got countered by camel spears. This one's going to get through to the levy spears. I wonder if it's going to head on into the skirmishers at that point, because it should be able to level that Thurio spear, and it did. And now it can go look for other targets. There's a camel spear right there that it went ahead and charged right into. What is this? Is this the Ptolemaic cavalry? Yep, it looks like it's cycling in here to help against the infantry. So Egypt is cleaning up its right flank. And they have some camel spears moving towards the slingers of Macedon. They're going to arrive on target. They're going to take a lot of fire on the way in. And they're going to be countered with a nice javelin volley there from the thorax swords. That's going to push them back with pretty heavy losses, and then they're going to be taking sling fire to the rear. So those camels are going to be feeling that. Let's look at that Ptolemaic cavalry. 46 kills. There's a lot of fire ripping into here, which could be good, but it's probably causing some friendly hits too. The Tarentine, the Great Tarentine battle over here, still going down. It's red versus blue. It's almost like a Rooster Teeth production there, if any of you ever watched those back in the day when Halo was still good. We've got thorax swords taking on thorax swords. This is like one giant brawl of like equals here. Brother against brother. I think the only difference is we got the camels against the Thessalians. I'm trying to figure out how this is going. I mean, Egypt started off pretty good on one of its flanks, and it's still looking pretty good here. Like, Egypt's got a lot of units left. There's still a thorax sword over here. Macedon's doing okay over here. The Tarentines are going to clean that up. Macedon's got slingers left on the field if they can keep them safe from the Tarentines. And this Ptolemaic cavalry, which has helped wrapping things up even further out here. It's a pretty close fight right now, to be honest. That companion cavalry, let's look at it. It's only got 44 kills. It's coming in for a rear charge here against the thorax swords. A little bit of javelins coming in. A little bit of friendly fire. Shouldn't be too bad. There are, however, Galatian Royal Guard. Moving in, that was close. Galatian Royal Guard's 89 strong, has 121 kills already. It's going to be a tough unit for the Macedonians to overcome. They're going to need to focus it with slinger fire, but the slingers are under assault. Some of the Tarentine cavalry that didn't die in the Great Tarentine Brawl. The Tarentine successor states. The Ptolemaic cavalry is rolling in here too. The Ptolemaic cav with its heavy attack stat would no doubt lay waste to skirmishers if it gets into them and gets a nice charge. Looks like it's pulling away at the moment though. It's interesting to see it pulling back. That thorax sword is going to take a nice charge there by the companion cavalry. Not so nice for them, but it's nice for the companions. That Galatian swordsman though got a nice javelin volley there too to pay it back.
Yes, Commander.
That Galatian Royal Guard is going to be crapping on the thorax swords. Let's see what's going on over here. So it looks like the Tarentine cavalry has finally come over here to help hold up the Ptolemaic cav and the other Tarentine cav, but now there's some Galatian swordsmen giving chase to the slingers, so a lot of combined arms work back there for Egypt. Over here, this thorax sword is in pretty good condition. However, it's facing two Egyptian slingers. One of them has their back turned to it in disdain. They might turn around, it looks like here. They've gotten a new order. And that Tarentine cavalry is looking to potentially rear charge them here. I don't know if it'll cause a lot of damage. It'll do a little bit, and then allow these Thurio spears to charge in while being shot in the back by slingers, so it could be worth it in that regard. The Ptolemaic cavalry gets pinned by Tarentines, charged by the companions, who are being followed in turn by the Galatian swords. So, it's like a chase scene here. Oof, that is a lot of sling fire coming into those swords. Thorax swords, thorax swords. Alright, the Royal Guard's still over here having a throwdown. It's not doing near as good as I thought it would against those thorax swords. I'm a little bit surprised. Trying to think who I feel like has an advantage. It is a nice play with these last few Tarentine cavalry here. That might get those slingers to rout. depending on what happens with leadership. The Tarentines, though, are very low on numbers, so it might be the end of them. And then the Ptolemaic cavalry is down to 7. It's being pushed back. I think the Egyptian general died. It said that. It says casualties sustained. I don't see a general. Yeah, general dead. Because I saw their morale start to waver suddenly. It made me wonder whether their general had died. But the Macedonian general is gone. I don't see the companion cavalry anymore, so the Macedonians also lost their general. Casualties sustained. And they're starting to waver, so this is going to end up really close. There's slingers left. They're picking off the rest of these Galatian swords, who are also being charged by the thorax swords. There's some slingers left on this side as well. The Royal Guard finally bests those thorax swords, who lose their will to fight. A few Ptolemaic cav left, only 7. So I don't expect that there's a huge bunch left in the tank for them. Numbers are in favor of the Macedonians for the infantry, but the quality is in favor of the Ptolemies here. Let's take a look at these slingers in action here. They are firing away at that thorax sword, trying to pick at it. That's not a bad idea. I mean, it looks like Macedonian slingers were a little bit out of position. Might as well do what damage you can do to that thorax sword. And it looks like, yeah, the Galatians are going to be the target of the other slingers. It seems appropriate based on what the Egyptians are dishing out here to give them some of their own. They've now drawn their sword. Well, no, just this guy. He's just the leader. What is this sword he's holding here, that one that's a little bit front-weighted? In some ways it looks like a falcata to me, but is that a Greek sword? I always forget the name. That's a cool sword. I need to get one like that as a machete to use when I'm out of my rural property. It'd be pretty handy. In any case, the Egyptian slinger is still alive. The Royal Guard took a beating, but so did the thorax sword. And it looks like the slingers are now taking some fire. So it's going to be a tight fight, and already, though, the leadership a little low for some of these units for the Ptolemies, whereas the leadership's seeming quite decent for the Macedonians at the moment. Maybe they're sitting around thinking about Grandpa Alexander and his accomplishments, and it's inspiring them to fight on in the face of many challenges. These guys still... Nope, they ran out of ammo just now, looks like. Oh, that other one had a volley left. I thought they were finished. I saw him release a volley there. Yeah, they've got another one coming here too. And so the Macedonians, so maybe a little bit of a feint there by both. Yeah, these guys got some more coming. So did the Egyptians, so just saw a good volley there get turned loose into the Galatian Royal Guard, probably trying to chip away more at their leadership. The thorax swordsmen are getting worked by those slingers. None of these slingers are particularly powerful ones, but at this stage of a game, it adds up. And in this case, if the Galatian Royal Guard go, then, I mean, it's going to be all she wrote for the Egyptians, and they are already down on a red morale here, so they are barely hanging on. It looks like the Ptolemaic cavalry just routed. Look at that, it stabilized some as they got closer to combat. It's like these guys got more sure of themselves. They're like, just put us into melee, coach. We'll be good. Now we're going to have a wet noodle fight going on here as it's slinger on slinger. You've already gotten to see Tarentine on Tarentine, thorax on thorax, and now it is slinger versus slinger. And this brawl to end all brawls. So here comes the Galatian Royal Guard, gonna clash with the thorax sword, and they routed. Very close battle here on this one. So I'm pretty sure Costanza is Soul, and then we've got Soap here. Soap has sent me replays as well. I'm gonna check those out. He played that last battle, or one of the last battles we saw, where he took down Soul. Very close fight here. It's a fun one between these two factions. It's funny because so many of the units were similar. One of the big differences, obviously, those Levy-Thurio spears. I feel like that Egypt is a little different than some of the other successor states in the sense that you can get a hold of some camels for some scare. You can get a hold of a ton of javelins between like carrion axemen and Levy-Thurio spears. Like you can really rein in the missiles. It makes them a lighter version of a successor state in some ways, meaning like less armor and stuff like that, but a more skirmishy variant of them. So it's a curious one indeed. And take a look for Macedon here. These mercenary Thracian warriors are always interesting units. They can do a lot of damage on the flank quickly, but they also melt and wrap up quickly. The Galatian Royal Guard did do well here, got a lot of kills, and then obviously it's a pretty even match fight between Thorax Sword and Thorax Sword. So an interesting one here. Hope you all enjoyed this one. Heir of Carthage signing out for now. I'll be back with some more for you soon.